Rebecca Romney appeared to be the ideal rare book specialist on Pawn Stars. She was composed, intelligent, and someone Rick Harrison himself trusted. However, all of it changed in 2014. On the broadcast was a stolen book valued at $40,000. After that, Rebecca was questioned by the FBI about how the stolen books ended up on national television. She disappeared from the show without a reason by January 2015. No farewell, no formal declaration. What actually transpired behind the cameras and the reasons the truth was suppressed for so long are being revealed now. Phoenix, Arizona, a warm desert city, is where Rebecca Romney was born on April 6, 1985. Her life at the time didn't suggest any rare books or manuscripts worth millions of dollars. She even made a joke once about how antique books were just dull artifacts for old men. She wanted to become a translator or perhaps a philosopher. She cherished profound conversations, languages, and ideas. Items that were unrelated to the auction industry she would eventually rule. She enrolled in college at the age of 18, assuming she would live her entire life in classrooms. By the age of 22, she was proficient in 5.5 languages. She taught herself English, French, Japanese, Latin, Ancient Greek, and even some Old English by studying for 12 hours every day. She once translated a Greek papyrus from 300 BC for a class test. And aced it. Professors were taken aback, and she would go on to use her expertise to find forgeries that may have cost collectors millions. She studied philosophy and ancient studies at Brigham Young University from 2003 to 2007. Rebecca was occupied with deciphering ancient books in their original forms and arguing free will in 4-hour courses while her peers were selecting safer majors. She achieved a flawless GPA, took extra classes, and graduated with honors. She compared parts of Plato's Republic from the 2nd century in order to support her thesis. It was unknown at the time, but this peculiar fusion of ancient language and philosophy was setting her up for something amazing. She committed a life-altering error shortly after graduating in 2007. Rebecca applied for what she believed to be a low-level managerial position at Philadelphia's Bauman Rare Books. She realized she had misread the job posting, however, when she arrived for the interview. It was for an expert in rare books, which she had no knowledge about. She nearly got up and left. She chose to stay, acknowledged that she lacked experience, and was hired nevertheless. Her ability to speak attracted their attention, and that was sufficient. She was managing more books than most homes in a matter of months. With a 1623 Shakespeare folio, a page from the Gutenberg Bible, and early copies of Isaac Newton's Principia Mathematica, she was thrust into a world where a single error may have disastrous consequences. Only 3 years later, in 2010, she received a promotion to gallery manager in Las Vegas. She was 26. She became the youngest senior director in the company's history in 2013 at the age of 29. In that capacity, she was in charge of approximately $10 million in annual sales from catalogs, auctions, and private transactions. One of her customers purchased a 1,472 printed book for $300,000. Not only was she skilled at selling, but she was also spotting fakes that others were missing. Rebecca Romney was not discovered by casting call by Rick Harrison. He knew her already. She began working at Bauman Rare Books in 2007 when they launched a Las Vegas store. By 2010, she was in charge of it. In 1989, when Rick had been operating gold and silver pawns, there wasn't much of a rare book and antiquities scene in Vegas. Through mutual contacts and a similar fascination with history, their paths crossed at local events. Accordingly, Rick did not ask producers to find an expert when he required someone who actually understood old paper, not just books, but documents, signatures, and handwriting. He called her after picking up the phone. She made her debut on Pawn Stars in 2011 as a person who was already trusted off camera, rather than as a paid TV personality, as a result of the call. After filming, their friendship deepened. The calm, bookish expert on film wasn't simply a good fit, but fans didn't realize it until they went on multiple dates. They hand-picked her. On April 4, 2011, the opening day of Season 4, she appeared in front of the camera and was given a stack of documents from the Civil War. They included a Confederate bond from 1861 that, if authentic, may have been worth $5,000. She studied the texture of the paper, the ink, and even the printing technique. Within 10 minutes, she revealed a fake signature that reduced the worth from $10,000 to a few $100s. They were riveted to the screen. She cross-checked information in private as the cameras filmed, speaking confidently. By the end of the show, she had transformed from a guest expert to the book lady and the star of the show. Ratings increased by 15%. They called Rebecca from then on if the pawn business received anything made of paper, books, letters, or historical papers. During the first 4 years, she had the most busy run, appearing in almost 30 episodes between 2011 and 2020. Her appraisals at that period ranged from a $15,000 original broadside of the Declaration of Independence to a $2,000 facsimile of a letter written by Christopher Columbus in 1493. She shocked everyone in 2013 by confirming the authenticity of notes found inside a manuscript that was believed to be worthless and connected to Edgar Allan Poe. She even handled documents from the 19th century's slave trade and gave advice on how to appreciate something so strongly associated with suffering and the past. By 2014, she was performing almost 3/4 of the appraisals for the show's publication. Her calls were challenging at times. A phony Shakespeare folio that someone thought was worth $10,000 was once refuted by her. It wasn't. She was unique because of more than simply her knowledge. She delivered it that way. Rebecca didn't ever speak loudly. She didn't appear shaken. She might tell something shocking, such that a book worth $50,000 was involved in a 19th century counterfeit ring, and still sound like she was casually describing what she was having for lunch. She started doing that. As other specialists displayed their enthusiasm, she maintained composure and clarity. Due to a book he purchased without doing any research, Chun Li nearly lost his job in 2012. He purchased a signed copy of Charles Lindbergh's book from 1927 for $500. We then accidentally referred to him as Mark Lindbergh. The entire shop believed it to be a phony. Rick even warned that Chumley's next day off would be permanent if the signature didn't match. Rebecca Romney took over once more. She took out a confirmed duplicate and compared the signature, pointing out that Lindbergh's autograph style had evolved as his fame grew. It turned out to be genuine. She thought it was worth $1,500. Chumley's purchase price was tripled. It not only made a healthy profit, but it also prevented Chun Li from losing his job. One of his infrequent victories was saved by a single, small signature. At another point, someone entered with what appeared to be Revolutionary War bonds and declared them to be quite valuable. However, Rebecca discovered a far-odd truth when she looked more closely. They weren't groundbreaking. The people were Confederates. They weren't simply uncommon, either. They were absent. After the Civil War finished in 1865, these records were no longer in existence. They were connected to assets taken from the South and placed onto the USS Republic, which sank in a hurricane that same year. After the wreck was found in 2003, some of its rusted contents were retrieved by 2005. These connections were a part of the past. $50,000, possibly. But there were legal ramifications as well. The store can face legal action for selling stolen goods. Police were called. History may have repercussions, as demonstrated by Rebecca's meticulous investigation, which prevented the store from purchasing anything that could have resulted in legal action. Then there was the period when someone believed they had struck gold when they discovered a 1623 Shakespeare First Folio. Actual copies of that book have brought in millions of dollars. The price of one in 2020 was $9.98 million. Rebecca looked at the seller's copy, and although it was excellent, it had problems. It lacked the small imperfections that authentic 400-year-old books always have. The paper didn't age properly, and the ink appeared overly clean. She thought it was a phony, perhaps influenced by the deceptive collection known as the False Folio of 1619, which was created by Thomas Pavier and William Jaggard. These are also valuable, but this one wasn't even close. It could have cost the store thousands of dollars if Rick had purchased it. One of the most expensive errors in Pawn Stars history was avoided because to her keen observation. On other occasions, however, the objects were equally intense and as real as they could be. That's what happened when someone brought in Charles Darwin's first edition of On the Origin of Species. The book sold out on its first day of publication, November 24, 1859. There were just 1,250 printed copies. After looking at the illustrations, the advertisements from June 1859, and the green cloth bound, Rebecca knew it was real. She estimated its worth at $75,000. It is impossible to overestimate the influence of Darwin's work. It permanently changed both science and religion. Not even Newton or Copernicus had shocked people like that. A few copies, particularly those containing Darwin's private notes, have brought in over $500,000. Subsequent editions are not nearly as useful. For instance, the 1862nd edition, which excludes Darwin's peculiar whale-bear tale, is only worth about $9,500. Oh, but everything was different after that initial printing. And resting in the store, this one was the sort of discovery that most collectors hope to make. Her evaluation of the first edition of Frankenstein in an episode that sparked internet discussions helped her become a fan favorite between 2011 and 2015. Both the book and the reaction it caused were worth $20,000. People began referring to her as the Book Whisperer. And her following grew to tens of thousands of followers in no time. Producers were urged by viewers to give her more screen time. A few even requested a spin-off. However, behind the scenes, things weren't always flawless. An episode of Pawn Stars that aired in 2014 would subtly ignite one of the most bizarre and unnerving theories about the show. The gold and silver pawn store was entered by a man. A rare 1841 edition of the Book of Mormon, they say. After closely examining it, the show's rare book expert, Rebecca Romney, determined its assessed value to be $40,000. The seller, however, demanded $100,000. After considerable haggling, Rick Harrison was able to purchase it for a mere $24,000. At first glance, the shop appeared to be getting another terrific offer. However, things began to go apart after that. Rumor had it that the book had been taken from the University of Utah Marriott Library. It is said that federal officials intervened shortly after the episode aired. According to these allegations, the FBI took the book and fled the pawn store empty-handed. No formal statement was ever released, and no charges were disclosed to the public. But YouTube videos and Reddit posts helped the tale take off. Additionally, Rebecca Romney was allegedly questioned by federal authorities in late 2014, around the time the FBI allegedly became involved. Rumor has it that the agents were curious about how stolen history volumes could appear on national television without causing a stir. This case wasn't unique. The FBI had already given the National Library of Sweden back stolen books in 2015. In 2005 and 2006, Forbes Smiley was arrested for stealing rare maps valued at millions of dollars. Though she was never charged with any wrongdoing, some people think Romney was profoundly impacted by the interrogation. She was well recognized for her self-assured appraisals of thousands of books. She had a shade on her judgment now. Then January 10, 2015. During her final appearance on Pawn Stars, Rebecca Romney evaluated a pirate book from 1734. Rick negotiated the price down to $400, despite her stating that it was worth $1,000. She vanished without warning. No farewell was said after 19 episodes and 4 years on the show. She was not given an explanation by the History Channel. Forums were overflowing with inquiries. Was she fired? Was it connected to the controversy? She left after a personal catastrophe, according to some. Others drew attention to the show's mounting criticism, allegations of phony assessments, arranged transactions, and internal struggles. However, fans saw something strange. Despite her disappearance from the show, Rebecca Romney kept Pawn Stars on her LinkedIn profile. She still identifies herself as their specialist in rare books now. Between 2011 and the present. It's merely marketing, some people think. There are many who believe it could be a non-disclosure agreement. Regardless, it continues to associate her with a program that she hasn't frequently participated in for years. 2016 saw her relocate to Philadelphia. It was formally for a promotion. In order to handle library acquisitions and catalogs, she left the Las Vegas gallery and took a position as senior director of Bauman Rare Books. She subsequently landed in Washington, D.C., where she co-founded a new rare book company after working in Brooklyn. Therefore, even if her leaving had a completely valid reason, the timing nonetheless caused some people to take notice. What caused the decision to be made only a few months after the Book of Mormon scandal? Was it merely professional development, or was there another secret going on? Fans were given another fleeting look at her by 2022. When she returned to the crew in Washington, D.C., for a special episode of Pawn Stars Do America, she evaluated another pirate book. She and the team still got along well. Chun-Li was teased by her. She made a joke to Corey. However, it merely served to further conflate her protracted disappearance. In 2016, Rebecca Romney wed a man who loved reading as much as she did. James P. Romney, who is a writer and historian. What was even stranger about the story was that J.P. had a family connection to a prominent figure in American politics. He was distantly connected to Mitt Romney, who received almost half of the votes cast in the 2012 presidential election. Through this marriage, Rebecca became somewhat associated with a dynasty that included George Romney, the former governor of Michigan, who served between 1963 and 1969. However, she has never met Mitt Romney, even with all of these connections. Though far, the connection was genuine. More name than connection. She had just gained notoriety on Pawn Stars at the time. She appeared on the show from 2011 to 2015, even evaluating a rare map from 1507 that was valued at $1 million. However, by 2023, the marriage was over. James P. was her ex-husband at the time, and admirers started to wonder if politics had ever influenced her. But Rebecca is adamant that she chose her own route in the rare book industry. A year following her marriage, she and J.P. co-authored a book that caught everyone off guard. Irreverent Stories from Book History, Printer's Error was released on March 14, 2017. It was more than a casual read. The book unearthed odd, overlooked events from printing history throughout its 368 pages. False reports of Galileo's work being copied, Charles Dickens' copyright battle in the 1840s, and even the enigma surrounding the 1455 Gutenberg Bible, which never specifically named Gutenberg, were all included. That Bible is now down to 48 copies. Each is valued at tens of millions. JP's storytelling and Rebecca's practical experience were well combined in the book. Critics gave it high marks. Sales were good, and she gained a respected voice outside of the screen, something that few reality TV stars are able to do. JP had recently released his own book, The Monster on the Road Is Me, that year, while Rebecca was still well known for her 2013 Pawn Stars appraisal of a $100,000 Shakespeare folio. The project was a creative high point for both of them, but it was also one of their final public partnerships. Rebecca has drawn a clear boundary in spite of the public's interest in her marriage and its political ramifications. Almost never does she mention the Romney name. "I have never even met Mitt," she stated bluntly in a 2023 interview. There is no doubt about the distance, both personal and professional. No one knows the names or ages of her two children. Furthermore, supporters have observed her lack of willingness to speak, even if she maintains the Romney name professionally. During a fan Q&A, she dismissed inquiries about relationships and celebrity. Only when Printer's Error was released did her personal life come into light. Even back then, the work was the main focus, not the union. With Projections, a science fiction anthology she edited in 2020, she made sure the stories, not herself, were the main focus. Given that rare books might introduce her to collectors from various backgrounds, some people think that her silence is an attempt to avoid political ramifications. Instead of simply quitting reality TV, Rebecca Romney had a plan. After working for Pawn Stars for years, she co-founded Tight Punch Matrix, a rare book company in Silver Spring, Maryland, in 2019. There was more to this than a charming antique store in a corner. It made a statement. She co-founded a company with her partner, Brian Cassidy, that defied all expectations in the antique industry. Their stock wasn't only pricey. That was audacious. Gutenberg Bible leaves, Shakespeare folios, and titles that weren't simply uncommon but revolutionary. They were selling to high-end customers and shifting items valued at hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars within a year. Additionally, Rebecca was a clever, outspoken, and unafraid individual who stuck out in a field dominated by older males. However, her disobedience began earlier. She co-founded the Honey and Wax book collecting prize with Heather O'Donnell in 2017. $1,000 annually to women under 30 who have assembled the most unique and unexpected book collections. The cost of the books was irrelevant to them. They were concerned about their meaning. In 2023, a tattoo artist won with a hybrid plant design. In 2024, a national security analyst won with a set with a military theme. Rebecca had seen something strange. Despite having a strong interest in collecting, women were reluctant to identify as collectors. That changed with this prize. Supported by Christie's and Biblio, it provided them with credibility, visibility, and a legitimate position in the rare book market. By 2025, it had inspired innumerable women and recognized 9. There was another change that year. On February 18, Jane Austen's bookshelf, which was more than just a book, was published by Rebecca. A literary bombshell, that's what. The way Austen's world was formed by female writers was obliterated from history, a phenomenon she dubbed the Great Forgetting. Charlotte Smith, Anne Radcliffe, and Frances Burney. Thousands of print runs of these women's names were previously best-selling. The majority of their work is no longer in print. Rebecca looked closely and found that only 15% of novels written by women from the 18th century have survived to this day, compared to 40% of novels written by men. Not only did she identify the issue, but she also provided evidence, number by number and book by book. And the readers paid attention. It was described as incisive and bold by the New York Times. According to the Washington Post, it was exciting. It was described as electric and instinctive by The Guardian. Over 20,000 copies were sold in a matter of weeks. What most surprised people? Rebecca acknowledged that she was unfamiliar with the majority of the women she was writing about. Not while she was pursuing her degree, and not even when she worked as a rare book dealer. She had read Fielding, Richardson, and the males, but she had never read Charlotte Lennox or Maria Edgeworth, despite Austen having done so. She was taken aback by that discovery. All of her schooling had silently silenced their voices. Furthermore, how many people would have missed it if she hadn't seen it? She then began to gather. In 2015, she started looking for original copies written by Austen's influential women. From 1728, Frances Burney's Evelina. Radcliffe's 1794 work, The Mysteries of Udolpho. The 1788 work Emmeline by Charlotte Smith. They were difficult to locate. Due to the fact that they were written by women, many were lost or brushed off as sentimental or trivial. In addition to hunting through estates and flying to auctions, she once fought buyers for a copy of Charlotte Lennox's 1759 book The Female Quixote. She had more than 50 rare books in her collection by 2025, all of which were resurrections. She was not merely a collector. She cited those books as proof. She kept tabs on how many were printed, how many made it through, and how the critics responded. She discovered that novels written by women had a much lower chance of being preserved, republished, or taught in classrooms. Despite being a major influence on Poe, Shelley, and the Gothic tradition as a whole, Radcliffe's writings were excluded from the canon. 3,000 copies were sold by Frances Burney in the 18th century. But by 1850, it had vanished. Additionally, Charlotte Smith's poetry influenced Wordsworth's career, but she eventually fell into obscurity. Using these trends, Rebecca demonstrated that sexism was not limited to reviews. The very survival of literature was ingrained with it. An antique library is not where Rebecca Romney's story starts. It starts at a Las Vegas pawn shop with neon lights, where she made her broadcast debut as a rare book expert. Nevertheless, she was able to enter the most exclusive circles of American bibliophilia thanks to that odd beginning. New York's Grolier Club is one of them. The nation's oldest and most prestigious book collectors association was established in 1884. Globally, only 825 individuals are able to identify as members. Despite this, Rebecca will be giving a talk titled Jane Austen's Bookshelf, Collecting as Investigation in May 2025. When she happened upon a Victorian version of Evelina by Frances Burney in 2023, that conversation started. Everything changed as a result of that book. It took her on a quest to find the women who had influenced Austen but had mostly been forgotten about the canon. She's not only recounting literary history, she's busy revising it. She has also been an integral part of the antiquarian book seminars since 2015. Over 100 would-be rare book traders come to study from her every year. She reveals to them things that most people never hear, such as the fact that the world of rare books isn't always pure. She is candid about the 1930s Thomas J. Wise forgeries, a controversy involving almost 50 phony first editions that deceived specialists for many years. She demonstrates how collecting is about discovering, not just possessing. Market value is only one aspect of her lessons. They uncover the hidden fingerprints of writers who have been overlooked by history. Among them was Burney, whose 1778 book helped establish Pride and Prejudice and sold 500 copies in its first printing. It is because of Rebecca's efforts that others are starting to realize that. She is also transforming the authentication process for rare books. Type Punch Matrix, which she co-founded in 2019, was more than just a book company. By 2023, she had a test case involving a $50,000 Sylvia Plath manuscript and was utilizing blockchain and artificial intelligence to verify provenance. Ownership may be traced back to 1956 using the software. There was a reason for this leap. Her 2017 book Printer's Error, which explored the history of forged books, including the 1840s counterfeit Gutenberg Bibles, highlighted frauds that led to its development. She was collaborating with digital companies by 2022 to create tools that most collectors could only imagine. One of these was a spectral ink scanner, which can identify forgeries with 95% accuracy, things that even the human eye would overlook. One of these tools discovered a fake letter from Columbus in 1493 in 2024, and she didn't keep these instruments locked up. They were invited to her seminars by her. In the last 12 months alone, more than 200 dealers learned how to use them. Techniques that were previously exclusive to the Smithsonian were suddenly accessible to anyone. She even began developing virtual reality (VR) simulations that let users digitally handle rare books without ever having to touch the actual ones. It's transformation, not merely conservation. Her aspirations didn't end there, though. By 2025, she plans to develop Type Punch Matrix into consultancy for museums. The business began with a modest $100,000 in 2019 and has since appraised more than 1,000 unique artifacts valued at over $10 million. During the 2023 Boston Book Fair, one of those was a manuscript from the 16th century. Another was a record-breaking lightning-fast sale in 2022 when she assisted the Lilly Library in acquiring 2,000 romance novels for $250,000 in just 16 hours. These are declarations, not merely commercial successes. Getting marginalized voices into institutional collections is now the main emphasis of her consultancy work. In 2024, she assisted in organizing a display that highlighted Black authors of the 18th century. She currently has 10 employees on her Silver Spring team. Her consultancy business might generate $2 million annually just from relationships with museums if it is successful.